All right, all right, all right. Okay. I think we're good. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Deal Desk. Now, today, look, it's going to be a little bit a different episode today. Today, we are going to address a much-needed topic in the industry, something that is overwhelming to many, many people, but it doesn't need to be. And the topic, of course, is AI. Now, look, I get it. I know everybody, oh, AI this, AI that, but I want to back up because my goal for today is not to talk about the philosophy behind AI or to talk about conceptual things or the technology or all the nitty-gritty details, but rather how to process AI as a whole and how to navigate through this crazy, crazy world. Because I, like you, have probably heard, you probably heard this a million times of like, AI is going to change everything. AI is going to change everything. AI is going to change everything. And it's like, I've heard that far, far more times than anything that AI has actually gone and changed, right? But yet, it is something that is going to change everything. There is this technology that's there. It's everywhere. It's undeniable, right? And everywhere you look, it seems to have crept its way into that. And that's because, factually speaking, AI is probably it is the most powerful technology that exists in the world today, possibly ever. And so we have this insane, massive, giant in front of us, but it's so overwhelming, right? And there's so much noise behind it that it is hard to navigate. And you're probably sitting there, again, if you're anything like me, where it's like you're curious, right? Like you're like, I'm intrigued by it, right? I wonder what it could do. I wonder if it could do this. But at the same time, you're like, I've got work and I've got, a business to run and I've got stuff to get done and also privacy. And I don't want, the tech overlords having my kids' photos. And so as, I've been researching for the show on the Deal Desk. Our goal, if I'm sure you know this, but if not, like our goal of the show is we sit at the intersection of the old world and the new world and where those two collide. And the premise of it and why this show exists is to prove that the future is not random. It's actually negotiated, right? By getting deals done, by decisions that people like you and I make. And so therefore, when two worlds collide, when old and new, when the old institutions and much slower established thinking meets technology and the new world, deals start to fall apart or contracts start to fall apart. Things start to shift and break and new things start to get put in place, right? Change happens. And when there is change, when there is chaos, right? That is what allows for deals to be done, for negotiations to happen, for change to happen, which means that when there is change and chaos, that is when the future of the world, the new world order, if you will, is being created. It's being determined, all right? And so when it comes to AI, I've got some good news and some bad news, okay? The bad news is that AI is here to stay, okay? It is here, whether we like it or not. It is not going anywhere. And we have to address, we have to have a way to deal with it because, not in like a oh my gosh, I have to become a coder way, right? Or oh my gosh, I've got to jump into it and join the hype right now. But it's going to change so much and affect every single area of our lives that if we don't have a way to process it, if we don't have a way to navigate it, if it's overwhelming and confusing and we just throw it off to the side, we're going to be in for a very painful and painful future and one that's out of our control. Now, here's the deal. I have some good news. The good news is that AI, as overwhelming as it can seem at times, right? And it's so complex, actually really isn't that complicated when you're looking at it from a lens of, okay, how do I understand what's happening, what pieces fit together, and how to have a practically applicable lens of making decisions around it. And that's really what it is that we're going to cover and go into here today, okay? And our goal is to kind of take this thing that feels huge and scary and break it down into little bite-sized pieces, because it's really probably the biggest issue that I see right now is people are like, man, this launches and this launches. You open up Twitter and it's or X, and it's every day there's 27 new updates and overwhelming, and I don't want to get into it because of this, or I don't want to get, it's okay, let's just take a step back and try to understand it. Okay, so with that, I want to back up, and we're gonna slow this episode down. We might break this episode into 2 parts. I don't know. Kind of depends upon how long we go. We might go for an hour. We might go for an hour and a half. We might go for 2 episodes that are an hour and a half. But we've got some pretty serious stuff to talk about, or some big stuff to talk about. So because of that, I have my Dr. Pepper, because Dr. Pepper, brought to you by No, I'm just kidding. Very serious stuff. But I do want to slow it down, and I want to kind of lay out what the next hour or hour and a half or so is going to look like, and what we're going to cover here. Because in order for people like you and I to process what's about to happen and to process what's going on, we need a map, right? I am not that smart. I would say I'm probably smarter than the average IQ, maybe a little bit, but I'm certainly not like a brilliant coder, understand technology at crazy levels. But one of the things that has served me very well in life, and I've learned this from several mentors of mine, is that if you're going someplace new, or you're trying to understand things, having a way to make decisions, having a map to kind of guide you is a really helpful thing to have. And so if we can go in and we can and kind of look at, okay, what are the different parts and pieces, right? We can understand the players, who's shaping the world, what their motives may be, the different tools that we have to look at, then we can take those things and we can create a map or a reasoning that allows us to know what's hype, and like people, we can ignore that, what things that actually matter and, that we need to focus on. And when new things come up, have a lens for understanding how it's going to affect the future. And I very, very much believe that the better you understand AI, the better you're going to be set up for the future and understand what's coming. Now, with this map, think of it like body parts almost. Okay, imagine you have, like, you need to be able to point to what's happening where, because AI is really actually not that complicated. Okay. But it feels like it. But it's like if I can point to the head, and I can point to, the hands, and I can point to the body, or I can point to, the blood vessels. Like, it's like, then at least I know where it fits. And then it becomes way less scary and way more usable. And for something that is going to affect every day of our lives, this is a big deal. Okay, so once you see those faces, the question simply becomes, how do I use it? So what are those faces? Well, actually, let me start with this. Let's go with the stack. So AI is not, like, when I got into AI, I would hear AI, and it was like AI, singular, right? And it's like, AI isn't singular. Like, AI is broad, and it's big, and it affects a lot of things, but AI has different pieces. And I would say that we're going to break today into 4 different main categories of AI, okay? Because if we can break them apart, it's easier to understand and make decisions around. The first is brains, so like a human brain. We have the brains of AI. The second is we have the faces of AI, right? So like a human face. The third is like hands, okay? So like your hands, or your hands and feet, okay? And then the fourth would be space/access. Okay, so this would be like the space you can operate in, the walls of your house, right? Or what you have access to or don't have access to as a human. So we call this the stack, the AI stack. Now that's very AI language, but these things stack together and pull together. And I love AI. I love technology. Let me re-say this. I am fascinated by AI. It scares me, but also it's so cool. And if I love technology and I want to be able to use technology to my advantage, my car drives itself and it's the safest car on the road. I have AI running in my house, but I also have electricity running in my house, and that's technology. I have my iPhone, and that's technology, right? You have your computer, that's technology. Your car, that's technology, right? Things in your business, that's technology. And so the better we can understand the better we can use technology, right? The better we can go and really shape our lives for the better and just be more effective in daily life. But the problem is that AI inherently is scary and dangerous if you don't understand the differences in the different parts. And so you wouldn't want to give a 4-year-old access to hand them a knife. And you also wouldn't want to give a 13-year-old or 15-year-old unsupervised access to the entire internet. But if you know how to use a knife and you know how to use the internet, then it can become very powerful. And I think some of us, I've met many people like this, that they're scared of AI simply because they don't understand how to compartmentalize it. And it's like, well, I don't want to give up privacy or I don't want to give up data. And believe me, I understand. It's so scary. But we're going to take a step back, break it into different pieces, and then that way we know what to ignore and what to dive into. So the AI stack that we have is brains, faces, hands, and then space/access. Once you see those 4 pieces, a lot of the fear that we have or uncertainty that we have turn into normal questions. Like, what brain am I using, or which brain would I use? Which face would I use? Whose hands would I use? And what rooms are we in right now when we are using, or are we going to be in when we want to use those things? Okay, so let me pull up my notes here. Like I said, the reason we're late today, actually, we started about 30 minutes late, is because I was doing a lot of research, and I have about 30 pages of notes, and I've tried to summarize them all down. But if I were to say, like, the real question that we have to constantly be asking ourselves throughout this entire conversation, it's convenience versus control. Because if you can either have control or you can have convenience. And we'll come back to that timeline or that idea, but keep that in your head for a second, okay? So the goal, here's how today is going to go, okay? We're basically going to break it into 5 parts. Number 1 is we're going to do I'll call it Act 1. AI is a stack, it's not magic, and what that means. Act 2 is we're going to go through the timeline. How we got here, who's playing the game, what are the key moments in AI. Act number 3 is we're going to go and we're going to learn about the buckets, meaning what actually exists today and the tools that exist inside of those buckets, what does what. And then Act 4 is the application of it, which is how we use AI without losing ourselves. And then Act 5 is going to be what we do with it, right? What do we do about it? Okay? And what comes next. So, starting with section number 1, which is how we got here, or the stack and how we got here. Okay? So, AI is broken into these 4 parts, like I said. Number 1 is you have the brain. So these things are called large language models. Think of these as like big, huge, like massive amounts of information. Okay? It's like when we say artificial intelligence, the brain is where the intelligence comes from. Its ability to process the information. And this started back in 2017. Okay? So in 2017, Google publishes an article called "Attention is All You Need." Okay, and the premise of this article in Google in 2017, this was before AI was a thing, was that if you change the shape of the brain, then we can make models that read and learn from massive text faster and better than anything before. Okay, so think of it like this. Before 2017, and really even before 2022, but like before 2017, computers were able to process information relatively slowly. The human brain was, for all intent and purposes, like much better and faster at processing information than computers were. Because the way that the computer's brain worked was very limited in its ability to process information, okay? And Google was trying to figure this out. And so Google basically comes along and publishes this paper back in 2017 that lays the foundation of what all AI was built upon. And this was fascinating because they just gave it out. They just published it, like open sourced it basically. And so then over the next few years, these companies, particularly OpenAI, were essentially taking this concept that was laid out in the paper published by Google, and these companies were taking it and were feeding information into this new model. And they were training and testing of how to get computers to process this information very, very quickly and getting faster and faster and faster at it. And the premise is that if you could go and you could speed up the speed upon which a computer could process information and the volume of information that it could process, then you could essentially have it do crazy reasoning like intelligence, hence AI, right? And so they're testing this. Well, what they found is that not only was this the case, they were able to do this, but that with the model that they had developed, this was in I think it was like around 2020 or so about 3 years later, OpenAI, before ChatGPT was a thing, figured out that you could have a single general purpose model that could write code, write copy, do emails, do explanation, essentially a general intelligence simply by feeding it data and information. Now, this is, pretty logical stuff. It tracks. Well, once they had this working concept, though, the limitation became training it. And what data would you feed it? And so they would go and they were like, well, we have the technology. Let's go and start selling it to businesses, or maybe as a almost like AI as a service, if you will, where they would go to businesses and say, hey, look, we'll house it on our servers. We'll train it on your data specifically, right? And we'll use it to do reasoning. But there was a lot of limitations to that. And so in 2022, November 30th of 2022, arguably the single most significant event in AI history up until this point took place. On November 30th, 2022, ChatGPT was launched by OpenAI. I don't know if you remember that day, but it didn't just launch, but it went from 0 to 1 million users in 5 days and became the fastest growing consumer software in history. The entire idea behind ChatGPT was simply that what if we stop hiding behind these APIs and just let everyone talk to the model for free in a simple chatbot or simple chat box? Now, pause for a second. Why? Well, because if you're OpenAI or if you're an AI company and you have this technology that's incredibly powerful, and the thing that you want is power and control, because that's what people, these companies are after, is they're like, hey, we want to grow, we want to have access, and you have this insane technology. Well, data is great, but data only goes so far when it is not coming directly from the source, which would be humans. And so if you could have humans, like real people, interacting with these models, then what happens is you get real-time feedback, and the computers start learning and processing and studying humans. And if you can understand humans, you control the world. The better you understand humans, the better, the more control you'll have, and the more you can rule the world. So the premise was, hey, let's go and let's get real feedback, okay? Real interaction, give it to everybody, get way more data. Now, it goes and it reaches 1 million users in about 5 days and becomes one of the fastest growing apps in history. I think it's the fastest growing app in history, okay? At that moment, AI stopped being a developer infrastructure and becomes a mainstream tool. And people realize, whoa, I can ask it anything. Revolutionary. However, this triggers the response from big tech, like as a whole, because ChatGPT was the very first one to do this, okay? Now, this is where we start to get into the control versus convenience, because really that is the argument of today. That is right, the whole trade-off. If you do old world versus new world, this versus that, the collision of these two things, it's before AI, to broadly speaking, you had control of your data, your thoughts. I mean, yes, you had Google where you'd upload images or files or whatnot, but you didn't have access to reasoning and your unfiltered thoughts. You weren't interfacing with the computer and interacting with it at deep, deep levels. What happened was OpenAI, ChatGPT, basically came out and said, look, here you go. You have the most insane leverage that has arguably ever existed for the average human. You have crazy leverage with zero setups. It can write emails, it can do code, it can do content, it can think, it can make decisions, it can do stuff for you. But the trade-off is that your entire chat history is now in the cloud by default. And early on, these users, most users, had no concept of just how much was stored on them. Now, sure, your conspiracy theorists, credit to them, they were like, oh, it's going to store all your data. And it is, okay? So to the point where, one of the reasons that this is such a big issue, though, is because it stores so much, it has immense power, and there's very little laws and regulations right now. And we can get into this later. But like, technically, you know how you have like attorney-client privilege? If you talk to an attorney, you can confess things to your attorney. You can tell them everything with legal guardrails that has to stay between you two. There's no like AI client privilege, which means that like technically speaking, if you were in court and the government was like, hey, AI companies, you have to give us all of your chat histories from this person in your interface or your software, like they would have to do that, which is crazy, okay? So you give up this level of control for this level of convenience, and a lot of people did it right away. Now, this was the first consumer level technology and interface with AI, and really when AI came on the scene and became real for a lot of people. Now, what happened though is that all these other big tech companies were like, whoa, wait a second. We're going to lose out on the battle if we don't go and create our own model now. If we don't have our own version of ChatGPT or our own version of a client interacting interface, we're going to fall behind, because like the most valuable thing in all of business is information about the end user. If you know that, you win, okay? And so over the course of the next several years, from 2022 and into 2023, and really, I mean, it's still going on today, but this is what launched kind of like the model wars. And this is when you went from ChatGPT launching to then Google rolling out theirs, and now it's called Gemini. You have Anthropic, Claude rolling out theirs. You have several different companies now coming out with these large language models of AI so that they could go and collect data and have control over the end customer. Okay, let's pause for a second. What do I mean, a large language model, a model? What is all of this? I want to break down some terms for a second, okay? Because, man, I really should have a whiteboard here. Remember when we said there's 4 pieces? There's the brain, there's the face, there's the arms, or the hands and the feet, and then there's the space that it operates in. Google's original paper, basically, they published this paper that says, hey, look, here's how you build an AI brain, we think, okay? All you need is the attention of the person, and if we shift the attention and we can process the information this way, here's how you go and build it. Companies were like, this is amazing, but a brain without a face or without hands, right, without the rest of the body is kind of pointless. And so ChatGPT comes along, they figure out how to build the brain, and they go, okay, now we need a way for people to talk to it or for it to talk to people. And so they put on a chat box interface, okay, the way that someone interacts with the brain. So when you hear LLM, that's a large language model, think brain, okay? Think the model of reasoning and processing that AI is doing. And when you think face or you hear interface, okay, think literally the face in front of that brain and think how you communicate with it. So chat, right? Chat GPT was basically saying, look, GPT is our brain, chat typing is the interface, so we're gonna call it Chat GPT. There's a reasoning behind this, right? That happens. Well, now you've got a brain and you've got a face. And if you've got a brain and a face, that's pretty darn valuable, because now you can train the brain and you can have people talking to it and it talking to people. So all these other companies were like, whoa, we're falling behind. Let's build our own brain and our own face. We're gonna get into more of like the technical terms here in a second, but catching you up to speed on this. So all of a sudden you go from 1, like blows up, to now 3 or 4. We enter in, this is in 2024, we enter this new model, frontier model era where multiple players are all racing and at the edge of capacity. Enterprises can now choose between several high-end providers instead of just GPT or nothing. And now, going back to this control versus convenience question, is from a convenience standpoint, now we have lots of options. We have 2 or 3 or 4 different ones that we can choose from, and they are all optimized for a slightly different thing. Like, for example, ChatGPT kind of optimized for general purpose, very practical use cases. Gemini, which is Google's version of this, was optimized to interact with their existing softwares. It just kind of showed up in Gmail and in Google Docs and places like that, Drive, stuff like that. Then you had Copilot, which is Microsoft's version. That was appearing and optimized for like Office and Windows. And then you had Claude, which basically was like, hey, we're going to optimize for like reasoning and safety, but like deep, complex work, but and really challenge stuff, but also kind of in a safe environment. And so you start to go and you start to get these different AIs that were integrated or created for different things. But the key thing to remember here is that at this point, while convenient, the control cost, what was happening was like the control cost was skyrocketing, meaning you had to go and give all of your data, anything that you did with it, to a centralized server. And that, like with Facebook, they stored all your data. ChatGPT is like storing your thoughts at this point. And so your work, your communications, your revenue data, information about you, your health information, anything you gave it, it has access to now at this point. And so the risk is exponentially increasing while the convenience is exponentially increasing, okay? Now, at this point, we really don't have hands yet or feet, meaning we can't do much besides just this one interface. All interfaces have been chat up until this point, okay? So, ironically, with AI, the more it grows, the safer it becomes. Yeah, kind of, depending upon, this will make sense in a second. Okay, so that's that was up until 2024. Now, in 2024, Perplexity comes out. Perplexity was a game changer because now, up until this point now, you had these separate different AI models, okay? And they were, because they were optimized for different things, it was like you had Claude over here optimized for this, and you had, ChatGPT optimized for this, and it had some integrations on it, and then you had Gemini over here. While they were all powerful, they didn't really talk to each other. And also, you would get one answer from this one, and then you'd get one answer from this one, and you'd get one answer from this one. And they were all kind of like coming out and doing their own things. And it's just like, okay, it kind of became chaotic and overwhelming, but also it was cool because you had AI, but now we just are more confused than ever. And so Perplexity came out and was like, hey, look, we're going to go and launch a new software called, or a new AI solution called Perplexity. And the premise was search results suck. AI is not that good at it. And even the ones that are, if you go and ask all the different models, they all give you a different answer. So we're going to give you a final answer with receipts. We're going to optimize it for that. And to do that, we're going to use more than one model so that you don't have to care or choose which model that you use. We're going to go and use all of them. And so Perplexity's whole concept was, okay, look, bring them all together. You just interface with one. And to this day, Perplexity is known as this, the most deep research, most accurate form of AI because it uses all the models to go and cross-reference one another. It brings receipts. It has sources for all of its references. Very, very detailed, okay? So what happened is that essentially, for the first time ever, Perplexity basically created an answer engine. Google was a search engine. Google was, I'm looking for this thing, help me find it, okay? Perplexity became, I have a question and I need an answer. Study everything, give me the answer, right? Based on all of your findings. And so this, it mattered because it popularized these multi-model orchestrations, meaning like model councils, rotating different models for different tasks, and always showing sources. And so it reframes search from, hey, here's 10 links to here's a combined answer from all of them. Let's pause for a second. Control versus convenience. You went from one model owning all your data to like each model owning all of your data, but it's like combined into, but it's like compartmentalized into each one. To now AI being like, we know everybody knows everything about you, and we're literally building you a digital blueprint of you with memory of who you are. Insanely powerful. Insanely powerful. Like to the point where like it's kind of shocking how much AI knows about people, myself included. But insane sacrifice or giving up of control, and these companies owning your data. And this started to become a real concern because people started recognizing and realizing, wait a second, it knows so much about me and it remembers everything about me. And now you have these super duper smart models that know everything about me, but also they can they can run tests and comparisons, and all of a sudden, over a short period of time, this idea of privacy and control of your data really started going and becoming, coming and hitting the scene. Which, sidebar, Apple, shout out to them. Like, Apple has basically done nothing with AI. They've sat on cash. It's a fascinating business model and a fascinating approach. But their whole thing has been security. And so Apple basically looked at this and was like, we can't. Like, we're not going to dive into this. Right? This is ridiculous. Like, we are all about making things safe and secure. And so while everybody else is going out there and all these other companies are taking your data and training on it and owning that, and you're having to give it up, Apple has continued to be this beacon of security, if you will. Okay, so the upside. The upside for privacy-aware users, though, was it did do citation first, so you could cross-check rather than blindly trusting. Okay, now, in 2024-ish, so about a year and a half ago now, maybe 2 years, Grok hits the scene. Now, up until this point, Elon was not involved. He was not in the AI game. He had stayed out of it, which is kind of crazy, but regardless. And I remember him tweeting, saying, enough is enough. I've ignored AI for too long. I'm joining the race. And his whole premise of joining was that we need to build an AI that tells the truth as we see it, is less filtered, is deeply plugged into real-time sources, and is maximally truth-seeking, not woke, not biased based on its programming or the data that it's fed. Here's why this was an issue. And if you remember, Elon buys X, or Twitter at the time, and the reason that he bought Twitter was because he felt as though humanity had a virus, and it was called the woke mind virus, being woke. And Elon's whole thing was, wait a second, we have all of these media companies, all of this, all these institutions spewing garbage, like the transgenderism bullshit, and all of the nonsense that you would, of wokeism, and stuff that was factually not based in reality. However, with an AI, particularly all these insanely centralized AIs, they have no concept of reality. They are not going out there and processing what's actually happening in the real world. They are simply trained to study the data that it is fed. And so if you were to go and you were to take this AI and you were to give it a bunch of factually incorrect data, right? You were to give it wokeism, right? An example of this was one of the the tests that they ran is it asked AI, would you rather misgender a transgender person or set off a bomb that would set off a nuclear holocaust? And it was like, it is worse to misgender a transgender person than it is to set off a nuclear bomb holocaust. Insanity. Why? Because it doesn't know the difference. It has no concept of right and wrong. It only knows what it's trained on, which makes it very, very powerful, but also very, very dangerous, and it'll hallucinate, and it can give you information that is not morally grounded in anything. Another sidebar. Jesus and Christianity and moral grounding becomes exponentially more important in a world of AI, because AI doesn't know the difference, and whatever we train it on is going to be its default. Well, who gets to decide what we train it on? And how do you train it on morality? And what worldview does it adopt? Christians or people of faith, people that with strong opinions about this, should get involved, because right now, let me tell you, the people at the top that are determining who is in control, or that is determining what these models ultimately go and believe, are not always great people, let's say. And so Elon buys X at the time and goes, or Twitter at the time, and goes, okay, we've got to open up free speech again. We got to get rid of the censorship, and we need to have a maximally truth-seeking AI, one that does its reasoning based not on the woke, or not on just the data that it has been fed, but rather on what it is observing in the real world, rather than just what it's being told, literally what we know to be true. It needs to be able to reason with that. And if truth seeking, whatever is true is its goal, that should be the thing that it measures against. Well, there became a problem. He ran into a problem because up until this point, I know this is technical, but stay with me here, okay? This is really, really important. Up until this point, every single AI model had essentially, like, it just studied resources, like looked at all the data and resources and just took it at face value. So it didn't have a way to like know whether this source was trustworthy or not, or whether this was accurate or not. It kind of was, I mean, I'm overgeneralizing, but not really, whatever the group think was. And so if you're gonna go and you're gonna try to create a maximally truth-seeking AI, you can't have that as a reasoning or a way of reasoning, because then you could just flood the system up with data that's inaccurate and you would change its opinion. And so Elon in 2024 introduces Grok, and he on X for premium users. I'm sorry, it was 2023. And in 2024, he releases the first ever weight-based model. Okay, now why does this matter? What's a weight-based model? All right, so I'm gonna pull up some definitions here because we got to go through these. Where's my definition sheet? Here we go. Okay, so large language model is like a very big brain of text or AI text brain trained on huge amounts of writing and data. Okay, it's like the brain. The models are the actual math brain file, meaning it is the file or the programming that interprets the information that is being fed. Does it go this way, or does it go, like, do we look at it this way, or do we look at it this way? Do we optimize for this, or do we optimize for that? Okay? Multi-models is if you have multiple models inside of a LLM. And weighted models are, let me back up. Multiple models inside of an LLM. All of these things are happening inside of the brain. So LLMs are like the information that's going into your brain. Models are like your actual brain. And multi-models would be if you had multiple brains or like sub-brains trained on the information that's inside your head. No interface yet, all still in the brain. Elon comes out and uses the same type of interface, chat. But the difference is that it was able to weight the reliability or trustworthiness of the sources, meaning Grok was able, for the first time ever, to not just interpret the data that it was fed, but the source that it came from, and it had a weighted score, meaning this source was more valuable than that source, or more trustworthy than that source. And also, because of cameras with Tesla's access to self-driving and all of the footage and video that it gets from the Tesla cars, it could also observe real-world data. So it could go and it could look at something and look at data, process it, and then fact-check it in the real world with video or with images based in reality. And this was revolutionary because you essentially are now introducing morality, or at least more important, less important, more trustworthy, less trustworthy, into the equation. And this was not a thing before. So part of the reason that I trust Grok the most with my data is, well, generally speaking, is because it is designed to not just give me an answer, it's designed to fact check it in the real world and weight the sources that it comes from. Okay, that was a very long side note there, or like kind of in the weeds, but that's incredibly important to understand as we get to what's next. So that's in 2024. Why it mattered? Well, this Grok popularized the multi-model orchestration, but I'm sorry, that was Perplexity. It shows that another philosophy, more uncensored and maximally truth-seeking AI, tightly tied to social and hardware platforms, and also that it blurred the lines between proprietary and open source. It also showed why a hardware, meaning the physical things that collected data, like cameras and cars, started to matter a lot as well. Because if you could control the hardware, just like if you could control the hardware of the phone, you could control the inputs and outputs of the technology. Elon's so smart, it's kind of ridiculous. So, convenience. From a convenience perspective, if you lived on X or the Tesla ecosystem, Grok integrated very, very well, and it was easy to use. If you didn't, it was a little bit harder. From a user perspective, as far as convenience was concerned, it didn't seem very revolutionary. And this is why I think a lot of people discount the significance of X. The reason that you would discount the significance of X is because if your experience with it doesn't change that much, then why would you think anything had changed? Or why would you think it's anything different? But on a back-end perspective, this was the first time now that you could truly know, or as a user you could know if you knew this, like that hey, this one's more trustworthy than this one because it's not just looking at data as a whole, it's looking at facts of reality. And because it was open sourced and we could see the code, you would know which one it was weighting for what reasons. Okay, from a cost control perspective, from a control perspective, yes, your data was being used, but it was already being used. Like it was pulling stuff from X, yes, but it was already being used by these other models. In my opinion, you didn't lose any control, but you gained a tremendous value because now you had a more accurate version of AI or of AI processing. Okay, that was Grok. Now, up until 2024, that was in 2024. In late 2024, this is where we went from brain and interface to now feet and space. Because even with Grok, you interfaced via a chat, usually on a computer or a mobile phone interface. It's not like you were talking to it, like with voice. It's not like you were feeding it video, although I guess Grok kind of did that a little bit. And the brain was all centralized somewhere else. Claude came along, which was from Anthropic. And the premise was, hey, look, enterprises, these businesses, these people that are using AI, they want very, very smart models. They do. We want power, or they want it to be powerful. But also, they want guardrails, they want oversight, and they want ethics. And they want it built in from day one, not as an afterthought. And so at the time, remember we said that the whole privacy concerns and data and security was becoming a more and more of a trend, right? The concerns were being raised about it. And so if OpenAI comes along and says, well, now we care about privacy, now we care about, your data and, giving you security. It's like, yeah, but like, it's too late, right? Like, it's like if your spouse comes to you and, your spouse comes to you and they've cheated on you a bunch of times, and then all of a sudden now they care about like private, or they care about like you being honest and telling the truth. It's like, well, yeah, that's great, but also like you've already kind of broken that. You can't really go back, right? And so Claude comes out and says, hey, look, we're gonna go and we're going to create from day one AI that has guardrails and oversight and ethics built into it intentionally from the beginning. And because of that, we're going to roll out much more use case or much more ways that you can use this besides just asking it questions. We're going to make it to where it can do reasoning, where we can have workflows, where we can have integrations with things that weren't available before. And so in March 2024, Anthropic launches Claude 3, the Claude 3 family. There were 3 different models. From 2024 to 2025, these variants start improving in performance and reasoning and coding and analysis and multi-model work. Because, like, here's the deal. If you have a really, really super powerful AI like OpenAI did, and then you take away that power by putting guardrails on it, Claude was going to feel like a step down, because that's what Claude did. It's going to feel like a step down for anyone using it. But after a while, about a year and a half or so later, Claude essentially caught up and became a really, really powerful tool, because now, with the introduction of Grok weighted models and integrations with X, they came along and said, let's take that to the extreme. Let's go do workflows. You have your N8Ns and things of that nature, and let's be able to put some hands on this sucker, right? Let's go, and because it can make decisions and it's safe, and because if it's making decisions we don't like, there's some guardrails, let's make it go and be able to do things. The convenience is that you got much deeper reasoning on the very specific task. Like it was trained on your stuff a lot deeper, and it had reasoning that went very, very deep. And also you had access to be able to do more things, more integrations on things, and like agents, which we'll get to here in a second. Some of the trade-offs though were that the data still flowed centralized. Like up until very recently, all data lived on the cloud, okay? Meaning lived in a centralized source. You couldn't run a large language model on your computer. You couldn't have privacy. You had to give up your data. Now, that's an interesting point. It says like philosophy is a control gain because like technically the philosophy was you should be able to have you should be able to have some control and oversight of it. Okay, well that's Claude. Now around this time, with Grok rolling out and with Claude rolling out, this is like late 2024, 2025, and up until modern day. A bunch of people, companies, smaller companies, basically said to themselves, okay, look, we now have these large language models. Google, OpenAI, Claude, Anthropic, all that jazz, right? And we have the ability to use those models because they sell access to us. Like you can pay to integrate with OpenAI. You can pay to integrate with Anthropic, which, by the way, xAI is the LLM of Grok. So think brain is xAI, face is Grok. Anthropic is brain, Claude is face. Google is brain, Gemini is face. OpenAI is brain, ChatGPT is face. Okay, so there's an LLM, like a brain, and then there is the face, and the companies or the products were essentially the faces. And they were like, well, okay, look, we can go and we can have it like do this processing for us. And now Claude has introduced this concept of guardrails. Well, why don't we actually make it useful to the everyday user, to you and I as a business owner, as a consumer? And the premise was people don't just want to chat with AI. They want AI that actually runs chores and projects, and some of them want that power without shipping their life away to the cloud. And so what happened is you had this massive explosion of tools like N8N workflows, basically logic and reasoning, like flows of tasks, integrations, products like Lovable, OpenClaw, local LLM models. And all of these, I don't want to call them micro solutions, but like subsets that run on these larger models, but don't actually require the insane amounts of data and capital that are required to have those large language models. And it gives you and me much more ability to go and use AI in our daily lives. Now, this is where it gets interesting because at first, I want to break this into two different parts. You have tools, and then you have the final piece, which is the space, where the data is stored, where the models are stored. So N8N is like a workflow tool. Like this is, think of it like an automation, right, inside of a software. It tells, hey, this AI, do this, and when you're done, trigger this to send it to here, and then trigger this and to send it to here, trigger this to send it to here, and you could create all of these like workflow tasks with AI. They would use the reasoning and processing power of the brain, just like hands and feet on your body would use the logic and processing power of the brain. But what they realized in the coming out of this, as they started building these with N8N as a workflow, Lovable is like it's like a website builder. You could just tell it to build a website, and it would just code it from scratch, right? You'd have there are all sorts of like these tools, right? Well, what they found was, wait a second, we can go and essentially borrow the brain of LLM models, these big, centralized powers, use it for reasoning, but keep the data, meaning our information, separate from the cloud. We can separate the two things. They don't actually both have to be up here, which meant that I could leverage the power of like the smartest technology on the planet that is revolutionizing everything, and I could use it in my own personal life or in my own personal business, on my own personal data. And if I set it up correctly, That data never went to the big guys, so I got all the benefit of the big guys while still getting to own my data. And this introduced the concept of cloud versus local for both models and for data and access. What do I mean by this? Well, you may have heard of OpenClaw. Took the world open by storm. Oh, we got to talk about agents. Yeah, okay, let's do this. Okay, so let's back up. If you have a business, and let's say you want to go hire you want to get some stuff done, and you're like, you know what? I should be focused on other things. There's more high value tasks that I should be doing. I want more time with my family, whatever or whatnot. You go, I'm going to go hire an employee. And you take that employee, and it's a person, right? And you train it on how to do the tasks, and it's really, really good at those tasks. Now, if I owned a hardware store, let's say, and I went and I trained a employee on how to run a hardware store from let's say I put them in the electronics department of the hardware store, okay? Or like the tools. And it's like, okay, they know all about the tools, and they know how to fix the tools, and they know the new tools coming out, and it's like super duper optimized for that. Would I expect it to know how to grow fruit? Of course not, right? It's like it's trained and optimized for that very specific thing. And so it's like it doesn't take a whole lot of processing or a whole lot of information inside of your brain just to focus on one specific area or do one specific task, make decisions around that thing. And so what was launched is this thing called agents. And an agent, technically an agentic agent, if we go back to definitions, is an agent is like an AI worker, like that employee that you have in like that hardware store that is built on top of the models. So like all of these, the brain power up here, it's built on top of those. So it's trained on those, like an employee being trained and running on top of the hardware store infrastructure, right? That can plan multiple step workflows, use tools, remember context, and act with limited supervision to reach a goal, kind of like an employee. And this was a revolutionary concept because all of a sudden, you went from having this massive brain, and the only way to interact with AI was to either be the company that owned it or to give all of your data to that company because you needed the whole brain. And it took it and it said, hey, let's put it into a model. Let's put it into an agent where we only need like a fraction of the reasoning of these massive, massive ones. And we're going to put it into like an identity, like a bot that's like a person, like a worker. And it's going to be specifically trained to do these types of tasks. But it's also going to have memory, so it can remember things. And it's also going to have logic and reasoning abilities because it doesn't need to have logic and reasoning abilities around everything. Right? It has to have logic and reasoning around this specific thing. And we could set these up and we could train it to do these specific tasks. Essentially, you could create employees, digital employees, to run anything and everything that you wanted to inside of your business or your life. But here was the crazy part. Because there was such less, because you needed such, so much less compute power, basically, like reasoning and like access to these LLMs. And because you could just borrow that information or borrow that technology or that processing without having to give it the data, and you could combine them into these agents, you could put your data and the power of these models into a agent, employee, train them on that, have it process those things, and then still own your data. And thus became what launched, roughly speaking, the timeline is a little blurred here, but became what launched Local. Local said, hey, we are not going to store the data in the cloud. We're not going to go and send all of our pictures to Apple, right? We're not going to go and send all of our personal information with our chat stuff to OpenAI, to Claude, to all these big companies, right? We want to control it. On top of that, what started happening was people realized, wait, not only can I control my data, I can also download or essentially download a copy of this massive large language learning model, and I could store it locally on my computer. Okay, this is what OpenClaw was. Okay, it kind of revolutionized everything. You might have seen this. Everybody went out and got Mac Minis and, taking over the world. All that is that these people would go, and I don't have a laptop around here. Think of like your laptop. You take it and you go, hey, rather than going and having AI, OpenAI or Gemini or a Google, rather than have them running everything, I'm going to run it all here on my computer. And it separated the power from big, massive, the big, massive companies. And you were able to have the convenience of AI, the ability to have it reason and think and do tasks without the giving up of control, or nearly as much control, of your data and your privacy. And so now I can go and have, let's say, here's my computer. Let's say I am a content creator. Let's say I'm a marketing agency, okay? It's like, all right. And let's say that the tasks that I have to do with it are, I've got to do research for my employees. For my clients. I've got to come up with some workflows. I've got to write copy. I've got to build whatever, right? You've got all these different tasks that you have to do over and over and over again. Well, it's like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get a computer. It's clean. It's got nothing on it. We're gonna download the model that we need, or a light version of it, to this computer, and then we're gonna set up take an employee, a bot, and we're gonna train it, like plug it into that model so it can reason and think like that. And then we're gonna put all of our data right here locally on the computer, and we're gonna create tasks and workflows that it can do so that it literally runs all right here. To the point where, now this is not how everyone runs theirs, but to the point where you could disconnect it from the internet. It could have no access to the internet whatsoever and still have, for all intent and purposes, full access or full ability of an AI model. This was revolutionary. Why? Because for the first time, you could get access, or you could get your control back, okay? Because it created this, we'll get to why in a second, but it created these essentially two models. You had cloud versus local. And then for each category, you had cloud versus local things. So you have let's do brain, face, hands and feet, and then space, meaning where did it live? What did it have access to? In the cloud world, you had cloud brain, large language models. You had cloud interface, which were ChatGPT texts, Grok text, like the boxes. You had cloud-based solutions or tools, which was, yes, you could go get your AI to do things, but it was all online. It was lived up in the cloud. It lived on, you needed the internet to access it, and therefore you didn't have control over it. These were controlled by these companies, okay? Cloud-based tools. And then you had the space where it lived, which was anything that you did in the cloud, or like with cloud-based models, lived and had access, or lived online in these big, massive data centers of these companies, and they had access to it. And it could go and had essentially these companies had unlimited access to that data. On the local side of things, you have local models where it's essentially a light version of the brain of these big ones, but it lives on your computer, so you control it. It's literally downloaded to the point where you could, take it offline. The interface became much more technical, hence OpenClaw. Okay, hard to set up, but solutions are coming. But it wasn't just a chat. Like there was code involved, and there was, basically mostly code. It was kind of hard to set up, but it wasn't just text now. You had many different ways that you could input data. You had the tools, meaning how it went and the tasks that it could do, you created an agent for, okay, to run these tasks. So these were workflows. It could do your research for you. It could write copy for you. It could, do stuff for clients for you. And it was very, very specifically trained on those tasks. And the space that it lived on was the physical, literally was on this, to the point where like you could unplug it and it would die. It couldn't take over. The benefit, or why this was so significant, is you have distinctly different approaches to AI. So from a convenience standpoint, obviously it's way easier to not have to set up all of your own stuff. So it's way easier to do a cloud, based approach, but you're giving up all of your control. From a local standpoint, much harder, but you get all of your control back. You're the one that controls. No one has access to your data. So I could literally upload pictures of my kids, and by the way, I'm paranoid just like you. Like I am way down the rabbit hole of AI. Like I'm so far down AI. I've got multiple different computers running. I have tasks running in the background. My car drives itself because it's AI. I told my wife, I'm like, we're gonna have AI be ordering our groceries. I was on a phone call the other day, and I had asked my agent to go and do some updates to my camera settings and stuff. And while I was on the Zoom call, it was changing overlays and stuff was dropping off my screen and appearing on it. It was wild. I am fully immersed in AI. But I was paranoid too, because I've got a 2-year-old daughter and I've got a 6-month-old daughter. And I'm like, whoa, I don't want the big bad evil overlords to have access to all of these pictures and information. I mean, I guess Facebook has them, but I'm like, it's different when you can do stuff with it. I didn't want to have access to my health data or any personal information about me, my any place where I would store logins or access. So what did I do? I went and I was like, all right, we're going to wipe the computers clean. I deleted all of my photos, all of it, did clean slate wipes of my computers, took all of the personal information, and I put it on a local, model. So much so that when I get a picture, or I take a picture on my phone, instead of it going and sending that, you have the cloud, instead of going and sending to Apple and it's being stored in Apple's data centers, now I take a picture, it still goes to the cloud, but the cloud lives here in my office and all of my data is there. Apple doesn't own it, right? Get into Bitcoin and the privacy there. Because for the first time really ever when it comes to AI, you had the ability to run these models at a fraction of a cost. You had the ability to train agents and employees to go and do things. And you had the ability to have it literally the space, that the final piece of our 4-part equation, the space that it was allowed to live and access was a physically bound. It had no connection to these, these overlords, if you will. So that brings us up to current. Most models and most people that are in AI, if you will, have a hybrid approach where they go and they have maybe local agents, think OpenClaw. So OpenClaw is like a local agent that lives on your computer. And they use cloud-based reasoning because it is faster, it's much, much better, okay? Because if you have a limited version of an LLM on your computer, of a brain on your computer, it's gonna do the job, but it's not like it does complex reasoning very well. And so for me, for example, I use Perplexity. It brings all these agents together, right? So one has 19 different agents. When I'm reasoning, when I'm thinking, when I'm brainstorming, when I'm creating, I'm on Perplexity, right? I'm I don't care. I want it to know everything about me because then it can it's basically me talking to me. And so I'm using that for these complex tasks. But if I'm processing, sensitive information, if I'm processing proprietary information, if I'm processing or training things to do a very specific thing, I don't even want the variation of complex or very efficient or very sophisticated models. I want it to just know how to do one thing really, really well. And so a lot of people will go and they'll set up these hybrid models. And that brings us to today. So you've got this balance of cost and control. Of control or convenience. Control, convenience. And really, if you take nothing else from this episode, that is the thing, that is the frame that you should walk away with this in, because AI is here. It's not even, it's not a matter of, do I choose AI or not anymore? AI is so advanced and is going to, it is going to take over things so fast, and the rate of exponential growth of how much faster it's getting, it will be integrated in every area or it will disrupt every area of your life, whether you want it, like it or not. Like, it's going to disrupt finance, and it's going to disrupt health, and it's going to disrupt, your job. It's going to disrupt data. It's going to disrupt the car industry. It's going to disrupt all of it. And so it's not a question anymore of, hey, do I use AI or do I not? The question becomes, how am I going to use AI? What areas am I going to use AI in? Which brain am I using? Am I using this brain or this brain or this brain? Do I want a brain that's optimized for this one area? Do I want a brain that's going to cross-reference things? Do I want a brain that's maximally truth-seeking? Which one? How do I want to interface with it? I think one of the biggest trends right now, and the thing that I am so looking forward to, is voice. Perplexity just dropped, I think it was 2 days ago, Perplexity Voice, where you can just speak to it and it does stuff. And I'm saying, like, it'll take over your computer. It'll code apps from scratch. It'll pull in real-time data feeds. I mean, insanity. It's like Jarvis from Iron Man. And I would love to be able to speak into a microphone, never have to type again, and have the interface change from text to audio, to voice. It's hard to do, but that's coming. And so you're just going to continue to have this. And you go, okay, so which brain do I want to use? How do I want to interface with it? What do I need it to do? Do I trust it? Like, do I need to keep it local? Do I need to take this part of my data and put it off to the side to where the AI can't access it? Or do I want it to have access to it? And as a business owner, as a parent, as a decision maker, as a deal maker, my hope is that you kind of look at this now and you look at this map and you go, okay, I'm empowered to make better decisions. Like, you should be empowered to navigate this world better. Because now, like, there's 27,000 updates a day. Everything is breaking news, never seen before. Oh my gosh, for the first time ever. And it's like, okay, do I need to care about it? Okay, is this relevant to my life? No? Okay, amazing. Well, how would you know? Well, if you've decided, I don't know, let's say you've decided, you know what? I would like to understand AI and I want to utilize it, but I care deeply, deeply about privacy and data and security. I mean, I'm going to have a local model on my computer. I'm going to download the LLM. I'm going to host everything right here. And now when you open up X or you see the news of this new reasoning model thing came out and it's taken over this, or this privacy concerns here, you're like, I'm good. Can ignore it. Doesn't matter because mine's running here. Okay? Versus if you're someone like me and it's, this just came, Perplexity Computer. It dropped and it was like, combine all these models and total, like, perfect memory of you. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is insane, right? I can make decisions now based off of that. And so as we kind of go through, I guess let's see if we did, Okay, so we did the AI is not a singular thing. It's broken into 4 different things. Brains, faces, hands, and space. We did the timeline of how we got here, what happened at each level. We did the buckets. So you have cloud brains, LLMs, which is the brain. You've got interfaces, which is the face. You've got cloud and local for both agents, which are like digital employees, and workflows, which are like tasks and reasoning and thinking for both local and the cloud. And local is a space, cloud is a space. Workflows and agents, fingers and hands and feet. Got it? So the real question becomes, how am I going to use this? How are you going to use this? I get excited about it. I do. I'm an optimist. I think that being an optimist yields the best results in life. Who was it that said Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett, or I don't know, one of them was like, optimists usually have better results than pessimists, even if the pessimists are right. Because I'd rather be an optimist and be wrong than a pessimist and be right, because you're going to end up at the same place anyway. So might as well be an optimist about it. And I look at the world today, and I think one of my gifts, one of the things that is a kind of gives me my advantage in life, or one of them, is that I kind of tend to be ahead of the curve on things, particularly when it comes to technology. And 9, 10 months ago, I was freaking out and being like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. And we shifted a bunch of stuff inside of the business, and my employees thought I was crazy. And my clients were like, Josh has lost his mind. And I'm like, yeah, but it's so obvious. It's here. It's coming. It's for 9 months or 8 months, no real significant changes. And then January of this year, it was like, boom, thing after thing after thing after thing. And I'm telling you, the rate upon which AI is learning and improving and changing is so drastic and so fast that over the next 12 to 18 months, you will end up, like, it will change your life. It will affect you. You will feel the weight of it over the next 12 to 18 months. I think with few exceptions, everyone in America, at least, will feel the ramifications of AI taking over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. So the question is what's your approach going to be? If you're a business owner, how are you going to choose to use this in your business? Are you going to take a privacy-first approach? Are you going to go and take a all-in first approach? How are you going to set up those structures? Do you want your team being trained on it? Do you want them to have access to everything that they're doing, or do you want to keep it private? If you're a parent, oh my gosh, like, I think about this often with my children. I'm pretty technology, like pro technology, okay? But I'm like, all right, well, do we even want cameras in the room? Do I want camera footage being uploaded to the cloud anywhere, on any device, right? Like, you think about your kids' baby monitors, and it's like most of those baby monitors are uploading that footage or storing that footage in the cloud. And you're like, yeah, I pay them like $10 a month or whatever for, so I can go back to them. I'm like, no, we canceled all those. I'm like, I want to have boundaries. I want to be aware. You should as well. It's like, where are you going to put those boundaries? Where's that line in the sand for you? Because if you're an optimist, which I am, and you should be too, and you look at the world today and you go, the disruption and the tsunami of disruption that will happen over the course of the next 18 to 24 months will cause incredible chaos and incredible change. And when there is chaos and when there is change, there is massive opportunity. The old world and the new world are colliding, and the new world is going to win, meaning the change is coming. We can't stop it anymore. So we go, okay, there's massive opportunity right now. How do I capitalize on that? How do I best prepare myself so that in 18 months from now, I end up on the side that was prepared, that leveraged it, and that didn't try to avoid it because I was scared of privacy reasons? Listen, I get it. I'm just as paranoid. But if you think for a second that when you use any form of AI, whether it's ChatGPT or a full-out agent on your computer, that little tab that's like, please give us, check if you would like to give it access to this, is actually stopping anything. That's just silly, okay? It's not. Privacy is an illusion unless you have physical limitations and physical control. And so I would implore you to think about these things and to be an optimist and go, okay, let me take some actual action with this. Because we now have, thank goodness for local models and local agents, and where we can get our control back, we now have the ability to participate in this world, participate with this technology. And yeah, it's not going to be as amazing as if we gave it access to everything, but we can participate in such a way where we can have a good amount of control over our data and security over our data and our privacy. And that is a really, really cool thing to me. So, yeah, I think that was good. We covered a lot. It was very, very dense, but that was kind of the purpose of this episode. Let me make sure I covered all of the pieces I wanted to cover here. And by the way, if you have questions on this, I would love to know them. I will gladly research it for you and bring you back answers. And I will definitely use AI to do it, okay? You can ask AI too. If you're asking for my preferred stack or breakdown, the answer is going to be, it totally depends upon what you want to do. I can give you what I use. I spend like $2,000 a month, I feel like, in AI tools right now. But anyway, my point is that reply back on X. Send me a message on X or reply to the posts or the comments on YouTube. If you have data or if you have questions, if you have feedback, I would love to know about it, because as we go and the world is changing very quickly, it's almost annoying how much we always have to talk about AI. It just integrates everywhere. And so the better I can get feedback from you and understand where oh, okay, this is where you're at inside of your business, and this is what like you're trying to figure out here, the better we can kind of provide helpful and useful information, and also just know where the questions are. Okay, I think that was everything. The stack. Yep. ChatGPT goes public. We did that. Yep. All right. We got it all. All right. I'll end with this thought. Understanding and wisdom is not something that can be outsourced. It's something that you actually have to go and get for yourself. And thank God for that. It's almost like God knew what he was doing. AI will not have wisdom. AI will only have a level of understanding that does not reach what we as humans can. But in today's world of fast change and this everything that is happening, you have to go and get wisdom and get understanding. Like, you have to be the type of person that is proactive about it. And whether or not you like AI or not, or whether or not you like the fact that the world is changing, it is. And so I would implore you to go out, and I'm in the same boat as you. I would implore you to go out and to know where your lines are, to know where your boundaries are, to put some intentionality behind this, to get educated, to become aware, to have an understanding, and then apply wisdom. Pray about this stuff. I mean, this is insanely powerful technology. This is technology that, I mean, I totally understand why some people with their conspiracy theories are like, oh, we're building the Antichrist. Totally get why. All right, it's like I want all of the knowledge in the world with and all the power of God without any of the moralities of God. It's like, okay, well, hello, Satan, did you call? Okay, so pray about this stuff. Study this stuff. Don't go, well, that's just like, I don't want to touch any of that because it doesn't affect me, or I think that stuff is evil. It's like, yeah, but you have to know, you have to have your map. You have to have your boundaries. And that's where wisdom comes in, and that's where understanding comes in. And so right now is your pre-internet moment. Maybe it's a little bit more than that. I would say it's like your early 2000s moment. The internet has come out, but no one knows where it's going. That's AI right now. And there's still the ability to get educated, to leverage these things, to understand these things, to be set up for a world of change, the new world that is coming, and be a leader in it by applying not your skills, not how smart we are. No. AI is going to be infinitely smarter than all of us. No. Wisdom, understanding, the intangible things that make us human, our God-given abilities. And this is your moment. Do not squander it. All right. Well, and with that, we'll be back tomorrow for the Bitcoin and Jesus episode. I will see you at 1 o'clock Mountain, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, live right here. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.